Welcome back, everybody. Uh, this is the last part of Unit 1. Unfortunately, we have to have a conversation about children who have suffered at the hands of their caregivers or parents. But at the same time, this is one of the most important conversations to have because it can potentially save a life. Uh, Data from the National Child Abuse and Neglect Data System. Uh, Over 588,000 children were abused in 2021, and an estimated 1,820 fatalities resulted from that abuse. In 2022, that fatality figure rose to 1,990 children. So, what does an abusive parent look like? Many violent persons, parents or not, have psychological disturbances which allow them to do the horrific things that child abusers do. Sometimes they're schizophrenic and have hallucinations or voices telling them to be violent. Violence may have been the way their parents raised them and their parents before them. Substance abuse can lead to child abuse. I think we can all think of the movies. I think of Precious. Uh, it's everywhere. Substance abuse, alcoholism, and verbal abuse or violence are correlated as well. Um, I just mentioned that history of abuse as a child, if it's the way they were raised, they might not know any better. I appreciate the phrase hurt people, meaning those who have been hurt in the past give themselves a reason to hurt someone else, despite there never being a good reason to hurt someone else. Some narcissistic parents may expect too much of their children or expect them to unrealistically behave better than their age allows. Children are impulsive and they just can't help it. They can really try the patience of parents. Some people are just close enough to snapping that all it takes is that last push over the edge and it's all over. Young parents who may not be completely and emotionally and mentally developed themselves may resort to abuse. Some people with a low education level have been known to abuse their children. Also, postpartum depression can also cause abuse in the forms of physical or emotional neglect. Postpartum depression does not have a definitive cause, but it is believed that mothers who are postpartum are faced with waves of changing hormones coming and going. Some mothers can be particularly susceptible to these changes, and it can place them into a severe depression. Not only do hormones have a part, but the stress of having a new infant, if the child is sick or not, if the mother has enough money and resources to live, and lack of sleep can all play a role in resultant child abuse. All of these problems can be caused by either emotional or physical abuse, as well as substance abuse by the pregnant mother. Some things to look out for in abused children are the instances of premature babies, ADHD, overactivity, developmental problems, and learning disabilities. Sick children to the point that they are chronically ill could signify neglect via withholding medical attention. A difficult temperament could be a projection of what they experience at home. A person who has shown no love has trouble showing love themselves. Inattentiveness or ADHD, as we have learned from earlier presentations, can be caused by abuse. Uh, I personally have run an MPSG on a child that was force-fed narcotics when they were a baby, and they had a lot of trust issues and kind of a warped perspective on reality. Uh, the providers were worried that there had been permanent brain damage. Family dynamics can also shape an environment towards child abuse. If parents don't have any money, enough money, or don't have a way to make money, if the parents don't get along, if the parents abuse each other, if the family moves a lot, if the child lives in an overcrowded and disorganized household not made for a large family, parents can become frazzled very quickly. Especially since COVID-19, social relationships and human-to-human interaction without screens has taken a toll on mental wellness. Frequent moves and social isolation, for instance, separating the family from everyone outside of religion or outside of or anyone outside period, or if the family lives far away from the next inhabited house, all can become stressors that lead parents to abuse children. The community that surrounds the family can also have a significant impact on the likelihood of childhood abuse. If parents live in unstable or rundown housing, it could be dangerous and lead to serious injuries, which could bring a neglect lawsuit. Maybe they can't leave the area because they don't have the means to move. It's expensive. There could be violent gang or criminal activity in the neighborhood. If the society deems the family odd or too different, they might shun the family. Resources for the family provided by the community, like parks and recreation centers, daycare centers, preschools, churches, and family support centers, may be scarce. Those situations would allow other people to perhaps figure out what was going on and help out. There are a lot of cultural and regional differences on how raising children is approached. Some cultures discriminate against women, force children into marriage against their will, accepting that physical force is a way to solve problems, and allow child labor and child soldiers. This is systemic child abuse. There are six kinds of child abuse. Sometimes they occur in singularity, sometimes there is a combination of types. They include physical abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, and Munchausen syndrome by proxy. For it to be abuse, physicality must be deliberate. Accidents can happen, and that doesn't really count as abuse until it happens over and over and over. Abuse is deliberate and with meaning. It can include hitting, striking, or shaking. When talking about protected areas, we're talking about private parts or parts that are easily concealed by long sleeves or pants. Shaking children is incredibly dangerous and can lead to a condition called shaken baby syndrome. It can lead to severe and profound mental disability and life full of difficulties. Children can become injured and can't move their arm or leg or can't move it without pain. Uh, inquire about how the incident occurred with injuries and bruises. You know, you when putting these wires on the shoulders for the heart wires or the chest, uh, you do have to touch the patient, and if they, it hurts them, if they have bruises, ask them what happened. Physical abuse can also be the failure to provide a safe environment, like a smoke-free and child-resistant house, because there's no such thing as a baby-proof house. When riding in a vehicle, children are also federally mandated to use an approved child car seat. Physical neglect makes up approximately 60% of all child abuse cases, and they can be the most difficult to prove. Neglect can be a result of parents' substance abuse, which is about 50%. If the parent is passed out or under the influence, they could fall asleep and miss out on whatever the child is doing unsupervised. Adequate clothing, enough nutritious food, and medical attention are all a part of the physical neglect situations. Certain religious people believe they are able to pray to a higher power and heal their children that way. Uh, and recently there have been cases in the news about sick children who have died because they were denied medical treatment because of it. Uh, a lot of parents leave their kids in the car as well. The heat in cars builds up so quickly in the summer it can be deadly. This can be considered a combination of physical neglect and physical abuse because the parent is leaving the child unsupervised and leaving them in an unsafe environment. What's worse than being hated or punished or feared? Being ignored. At least when someone hates you, they see you as a person. Ignoring and neglecting a child has incredible implications. It deprives the child of hormones that release chemicals of well-being and a sense of place and home, which encourages emotional development. Every child has a minimum need for affection and emotional support. Refusing to touch a child, refusing to hold a child, or comfort them when they are upset are all forms of emotional neglect. Choosing not to speak to a child not only inhibits their language development, it creates a false sense of reality about the world. Unfortunately, sexual abuse is rampant in America, and so is child sexual abuse. There is also a wide range of sexual abuses, from something like sexual comments or fondling to more grievous encounters like intercourse. Children have no control over what happens, ever. Children do not ask for it. Some children are even exploited, showing up in child pornography or being paid in money or treats for sexual favors. About half the victims show no signs, but 90% of the victims already knew who the offender was. Evidence shows that most victims are in middle childhood, and children rarely lie about sexual abuse. However, some incidents aren't believed, and so they're grossly underreported. Some children are afraid to say anything because they fear the consequences from the abuser or their parents. A lot of times their abuser will say, if you do this, something bad's going to happen to you or your parents or your dog. Even if the allegations of sexual abuse are false, it's a general indicator that there are problems at home. Kids don't just lie about things like that for no good reason. Other than being ignored, parents abuse their children with psychological abuse. You're never good enough. I wish you had never been born. Your brother never does this. You should find a way to fix yourself so you don't get wrecked. I would love you more if... things like that. Children suffer abuse at the hands of their parents through ridicule, humiliation, perhaps in public. Uh, it attacks their self-confidence. It lowers their self-esteem. They're being controlled through mental manipulation. All these behaviors, continuing to hear negative comments and no love reciprocated, damages the child's cognitive, emotional, and social functioning. It can show up as oppositional, aggressive, or anger management problems. Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Munchausen syndrome is about a person who craves attention, sometimes with medical professionals, when there's nothing wrong. Uh, this way, with their child, the parent will make up stories or illnesses that they think the child has so that they can have a professional pay attention to them. This is one reason video recording is mandatory for sleep studies, because you never know what you might find. Be vigilant when running pediatric sleep studies for signs of maltreatment. You may notice bruises, injuries, or certain behaviors. If you try to touch the patient and they recoil back like you're going to hit them, if you're an imaging specialist and you might notice old but healed fractures that aren't in their chart. If the patient or if the parent or caregiver doesn't seem like a nurturing parent and more like an abusive individual, or if the patient shows changes in behavior, manifesting into withdrawal, fear of men or women, nightmares, loss of trust, and urinary tract infections that keep happening. Continue a quiet investigation and remember to document everything. Remember, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. I myself have written notes and studies describing parents yelling at their young children because they weren't behaving. But how can they? They're so young and their mind hasn't developed to keep long attention and to even know what's going on in a sleep study. And it was just really, it's really sad to see. So keep your eyes and ears open at all times. Okay, that's it for Unit 1, and that's it for child abuse for now. Uh, I'm going to work on the dates for your material so you'll have. I want to give you at least a week. I'll probably give it till September 7th to finish all the work on Unit 1. That way you'll have a week to finish everything. If you have comments, questions, queries, interests, anything like that, feel free to text me. That's the best way to get up with me. You can also email me. See you next time.